Hey, it's Nick with Nick's Hobby Corner, and today we're going to be building a completely rusted out abandoned head of an ATST from Star Wars. So taking a quick look around the kit, looks like all the molds look pretty great, everything looks good. With my little experience with Bandai, I would say that they seem extremely consistent with the quality of their kits. I completed the lower section of the build first, but I didn't include the footage of that since we're not using it for the video. But now it's time to start the part that we are actually using, which is the top. Or is it called the head? I honestly don't know. Alright, you guys aren't here to watch me build this thing. You're here to watch me weather and destroy it, so let's just go ahead and take a quick trip through the building process. So here we are with an already weathered top. I actually started weathering it with one of those Tamiya weathering master kits. I really like the look it gives, and in my head it made sense to start out with it this way, but since you guys have already seen the finished product, you know that all this will be covered up. So I'm going to start out here with Vallejo acrylic chocolate brown as my dark rust base. I think potentially going for a more dark red color may have been better, but I think this color is fine also. I picked up some sponges from Hobby Lobby and cut them up into smaller pieces. I then get some paint on it and dab it on the paper towel until it seems like most of the paint is gone. This way when I start patting it onto the model, it will leave a random dotted pattern, hopefully giving us a nice random rusted look. Since doing this, I've actually learned about these things people are making, which I believe are called dry brush palettes. Basically, you take a small tray of some sort and glue a ton of little random model parts to it. Then you dab or wipe your sponge or brush all over the parts until you start to get the consistency that you want. The paper towel pulls the paint and moisture out of the brush or the sponge, which is not what you want. The parts obviously won't. Plus with the parts, you will actually see how your brush or sponge will interact with the parts you're going to paint. So I do plan on making one of these in the near future, and we'll probably make a video on it as well. I continue the process with a brush, trying to make a random but consistent rust around the edges all around the machine. Consistency is something you want to remember when doing something like this. You want the amount of weathering to make sense overall with how long it was exposed to the elements or what kind of environment it was in. So you don't want a whole lot of weathering in one area and then not much in another area unless there's actually something that caused it to be that way. I start adding in the rust and light rust colors. Due to this being my first time doing rust, I guess I hadn't studied rust enough to realize that the older rust is going to be the dark brown areas, and as the rust reaches the areas where it's newer, it's going to have the more colors such as red and orange and stuff like that getting brighter as it's more fresh. But that's okay. The nice part about paint is that it can paint over itself. I start adding in a bit of rust wash to get that rust bleeding look you get on a rusty metal when it sees a lot of moisture. At this point, of course, I do more study on rust and realize that the edges need to start with the darker color, so I'm going to go ahead and go back over those with the darker color. After I'm happy with my layout of the darker brown, I bring in the dark reddish rust color to start bleeding into the chunks of dark brown. Then comes the light rust color. This is a very light orange rust color, which brings a really nice transition from the darker red. Once again, I'm bringing this one further inward to continue the gradient from darks to lights. Now the Vallejo light rust wash to get things looking very messy. Washes are a ton of fun to work with. I'm super new to them personally, but really looking forward to learning more about how to use them in the future. I really feel like they can bring any model to a whole new level. So at this point, we've skipped ahead in time quite a bit. I lost some footage due to some technical difficulties. You notice on the left side of the machine, it's now a ton more rusted than where we left off in the last footage. While playing around with the wash, things got a bit wet. And with me dabbing it with some paper towels to pick up the extra wash, I actually started taking off a lot of the paint. So I had to kind of start over and redo that side a bit. Lesson learned though, separate your layers with a gloss varnish in order to protect them. No big deal though, after all this build is going to be a very long time abandoned machine, so making it completely rust covered and destroyed will be absolutely fine to fit the theme. I'm not just repeating the same process as we did on the left side all over, but this time much heavier, starting with the dark brown, bringing in the red color, and then the light rust. I've always heard people say that beginner tank builders always end up way overdoing the weathering process, which makes a ton of sense, so I'm glad that for my first time weather build, I did something that was like this, where it's just long time abandoned and completely destroyed. That way I get to overweather it on purpose. So in other builds though, I can definitely see how less is more, so I'll definitely be curious to see how I do with lighter amounts of weathering in other less abandoned projects in the future. Now that I've for the most part finished up 3 layers of rust color, I'm going to be coming back in with the wash as actually more of a filter. I'm basically just completely covering and flooding the surfaces to bring in more of a uniform orange rust all over. I feel like using the rust wash as a filter in this instance just gives everything a really nice, nasty orange color, and yeah, I think it looks good. And that's it for the first part of this video, guys. Thanks a bunch for tuning in. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and leave a comment with any questions or opinions down below, or even just to say hi. Hit that subscribe button so that you can tune in for part 2, where I'll be creating the diorama base and finishing weathering this model with grime and moss and everything else. Thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you guys in the next one.